Hello, I want to tell you a story of another beautiful woman in Venice. Today I have the story of Modesta Pozzo. And she was born here in Venice, and when she was just a child, both of her parents died. Luckily her uncle, his name was Doglioni, he took her in, and he was a humanist, which means he believed that women should be educated just like men. So he first sent her to the convent of Santa Marta, which is on the other side of the island, and she had her basic education there. Then she moved back with her uncle and received a very good education in the classics, Greek, Latin, philosophy, grammar, music, instrumentation, all sorts of things, a very well-rounded education. And she was encouraged to use her education, to use her mind, to speak with other learned people. So Doglioni had another family friend who was very dear to Modesta Pozzo. When this girl married, Modesta lived with that family until she later married herself. And at that time she also, actually before she was married, she started writing. Her first book was called The Worth of Women. And this is a really interesting piece because there was a tradition for men to write these books that showed a group of men sitting around and discussing philosophy or other big ideas. Modesta Pozzo was the first woman who wrote something like this. And her story shows a group of women, noble women, in a villa on the mainland for about 3 days. And they have great discussions about everything under the sun. Astronomy, grammar, philosophy, the Bible, the order of humanity, and they argue back and forth. They also argue back and forth about men's and women's roles and husbands' jobs and wives' duties, and really challenge the status quo of the day. This was a neat book because this sort of book had been done by men before, but Modesta was the first person who did this kind of story with a woman's voice, and where all of the characters in it were women. So we really got the voice and the ideas and the impressions of women of her time, which was really lost. So really important voice. Then she went on to write a second book called The 13 Cantos of Floridoro. And in this one, it's an epic romance, kind of like Ariosto's Orlando Furioso. And in this one, again, this was a standard format that had been written over and over by men. There were 2 or 3 books like this written by women before Modesta. But in hers, she had a female protagonist named Risamante. Actually, Risamante and her sister Biondora were twins separated at birth. Risamante was raised to be a warrior, a soldier, a fighter. In part of the story, she hears cries of distress, finds this woman trapped in a cave by a giant serpent. So Risamante kills the serpent. Really symbolic, right? You know, a serpent's phallic, all of that. So you have this woman warrior who is using her power, using her strength to vanquish men. And the story goes on to show all of Risamante's power. Again, we get this kind of standard story, but from a woman's perspective, which was quite unique and very powerful. Unfortunately, Modesta Pozzo died in childbirth, giving birth to her 4th child. Her husband had always supported her. He was a wonderful man, and her uncle supported her throughout her life, and in fact published her book after her death. So we do have some of her writings. I'm here today because this is the place where she was buried. This is the Church of the Frari, and there used to be convents attached to it here, and she was buried in the courtyard there. Now, when I tried to get some more details about exactly where and to try to find the plaque that shows where she was buried, the marker, it's apparently gone. And this is now the State Archive building, so it really doesn't exist. But it's one of the very few places in Venice we have to connect with the life of such an important writer, Modesta Pozzo.